is the United States Supreme Court over my shoulder. I was there. I stood in front of the building. Yay! Estate planning and divorce, how did the two collide? Typical scenario. A married couple has an estate plan together. Shared children, shared property, shared estate plan. Perhaps they have joint trusts. They may have separate last wills and testament. And they may have, sweetheart, if I die, everything goes to my spouse. If my spouse isn't alive, then it goes to my children. Something like that, right? It's a typical scenario. If you get divorced, you need to change your estate plan. It makes sense, right? But sometimes we think about it and sometimes we don't. There's an estate plan that's comprised of a will or a trust, sometimes both. If you have a trust and you do it with me, you always additionally obtain a last will and testament. I make them work in conjunction. Besides the end of life documentation, there's also advanced directives, a power of attorney, a healthcare proxy. When you're an intact, married, happily married couple, mostly, not all the time, but you'd have your spouse as your proxy. You'd have your spouse as your agent in the power of attorney. All that needs to change after the divorce. Do you want your spouse in charge of the pull the plug document? They really aren't anyway, but that's what we need to do. There are other types of financial instruments or documents that also need to be changed. If you have a bank account and your beneficiary is your spouse, change it. The will won't do that. The divorce judgment won't do that. If you have a brokerage account, change the beneficiary. If you have a pension, change the beneficiary. You can't change it prior to the judgment of divorce, but you can change it after. If you have a life insurance policy and your beneficiary is your spouse, be mindful about that, because if you have shared children, you may want the insurance policy proceeds to go to your former spouse for the benefit of your children, especially if they're minor. But if you have adult children, probably want to remove your spouse, make your children the beneficiaries of the insurance policy. So take an assessment of what you have, where it is, look at, put it down on paper, pen to paper, write it down, take a look. What do I have to change? Where do I want it to go? And what can remain intact? Is divorce mediation right for me? Yes, depending. If there's no violence, no disparity in balance of power, if there's no history of domestic violence, if there's no intimidation, if there's a level playing field, then I do recommend divorce mediation. I always ask my petitioning client, right, the plaintiff, the person that came into my office to file for a divorce. And I actually even ask the people that have been served with papers, the relationship that you have, obviously, I don't think I even used the word obviously. The relationship that you have is presently fractured because either you want to file a divorce case or you have received a divorce case. But is there a way through to the other side? Can you speak to a member of the clergy, a family member, an esteemed matriarch or patriarch of the family? Can you speak to a member of your community, your church, synagogue, mosque, an elder? Is there someone, either within the family that has that strong leadership role that can mediate, or is there someone in your community that can mediate, or a clergy? And can you discuss the issues and the problems you have? If that's available, if that's a resource that's true to your own factual circumstances, then I recommend it. Marriage counseling, I recommend. So both the unpaid and paid option. So a marriage counselor costs money. Perhaps it's covered in your health insurance plan. So you should seek the services of that type of impartial person that can mediate conflict and find some kind of resolution. Then if that's not available, utilize the services of a divorce mediator, a person trained in hearing the merits of a person's position, their concerns, their thoughts, beliefs, right? Their position, and then hear the other person's position and perhaps find a mediated solution. You can save money, time. There's a way to structure your meetings, perhaps a series of 3 or 6 meetings, or 9 or 12, depending on your assets and your family dynamic. 3 kids as opposed to no kids, right? Pensions and retirement accounts, a lot of assets as compared to a few assets, right? So those are some of the things you should work through, and I do recommend divorce mediation, and it can be right for you. Take this as your circumstances permit. So if you have a certain power disparity and you can't get a word in edgewise, then you need an advocate to put your position forth. Advocate. All right. Wish you a lot of luck. Try these other resources first. If you need help, Frank, Bruno, law.com.